Welcome to Pamela Price Unfiltered. I'm Pamela Price, your host. And this is the place and the space for real talk and raw conversations. We go beyond the headlines to dive deep into the issues that are pressing on our community and that impact real families, real people, and our community. Every week, every Tuesday, my goal is to help you navigate the complexities that challenge us in this season. Each episode will tackle an issue, whether it's politics, law, community organizing, education, systemic racism, and we'll hear from community leaders, from lawyers, from activists, from educators, from healers, and everyday people on the front lines of change. For those tuning in for the first time, I'm Pamela Price, a longtime attorney, political activist, advocate, and champion for justice based in Oakland, California. Today, my guest is Elisa Victory, who is here to talk with us about Oakland politics and the Oakland mayor's race coming up. Elisa is a lifelong Oakland resident, a union leader, a community and political activist, and a lawyer serving the Bay Area and across California. Elisa holds a BA with honors in ethnic studies and a minor in Black studies and a law degree concentrated on government law. Elisa currently works as a criminal justice attorney focusing on police, incarceration, and prosecution. Elisa is a defender of democracy who ran a historic grassroots campaign in the 2022 election to become the first Black woman elected to serve as the mayor of Oakland. I have known Elisa since she graduated from law school. Full transparency, she worked on my first campaign for Alameda County District Attorney in 2017, and I've watched with pride as she spread her wings as a political force in Oakland and across California. I'm honored to have Elisa with us today to talk about what's happening in Oakland now in the midst of a special election for Oakland mayor. Elisa was a candidate for mayor in 2022 who understood and fully utilized the ranked choice process that we have to that catapulted her to a high finishing. So let's talk about it. Elisa, welcome to Pamela Price Unfiltered.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to see you. Your purple energy is always so calming and healing. Well, happy Friday.
Purple power. Happy Friday, purple power. Yeah. So tell us, based on you ran an amazing campaign in 2022. You took the community by storm. A lot of people were surprised. And so, can you tell us what, from your perspective and the insights, what do you think is going to be the key issues in this election in 2024 in the mayor's race?
Absolutely. Like 2025. Well, this
Right.
is, a unique election. This is a special election. I ran in the general election cycle for a regular 4-year term. This is not that. Whoever is elected this April 15th will only have around 18 months to serve and finish out the term of our recalled former mayor, Shang Tao. So this is a special election. It's not for a full term. And so there's not as much that any mayor could get done in 18 months versus the full 4-year term. So I think the top priority, the top issue is going to be our city's budget. Our budget cycle ends June 30th. We're hearing all types of scary numbers about how large the deficit is for not just this year, but projected into next year as well, because our budgets are usually on a 2-year cycle. We're going to be seeing a proposed budget from the interim mayor, Kevin Jenkins, who is the elected District 6 council person. And whoever's elected in April will have to work from that, have to work with the council, who then passes the budget in June, and then it goes right back to the mayor and the city administrator to implement. We're looking at deficits, which means cuts, which means less services, less employees, less ability to do new things and try initiatives and to expand on programs or projects that are working. So it's going to be very hard fiscally for any candidate to push through anything new. They have to be focused on triaging and stopping us from going into further deficit, from trying to stabilize our budget, our staff, and our city services so that we still have a baseline and that we don't lose even more than we're projected to.
So that's an important point. Thank you for bringing that perspective. When will the next mayor, assuming this person, they have the 18 months, when will the next election be for the mayor to serve out a full term?
The next regular election is November 2026. So be prepared to vote this coming month. Ballots actually are released in the mail starting next Monday. And then be prepared to vote next year for a mayor to serve a full 4-year term. Some of the candidates who are running now say that they will continue to run and will be in the next election. Some may not. So we have, again, even if you don't like who is elected or you don't like what they do in the next 18 months, you will have a chance to vote for a new mayor at the regular election in 2026.
So it sounds like Oakland will be in a constant season of election through November of 2026.
Yes.
And can you help our audience explain our audience, help them understand how challenging it is to run for office?
Oakland is a large city of around 400,000 residents. It has a lot of complex issues that have pretty much been here since I was a child. I grew up in Oakland. I've lived here my whole life. I've dealt with issues growing up as a teen of homelessness, right, of poverty. My mother was a teacher who wasn't getting paid enough. We still don't pay our teachers enough. I attended schools in Berkeley Unified School District and had to commute from Oakland. Our Oakland Unified School District is still in crisis. So we are seeing some of the issues that have been longstanding for decades that are actually getting worse, that we don't see improvement even over decades of changes in leadership and promises to fix these. So there's always frustration from the electorate, from voters of just, how are you going to change? We're not sure you're going to be different. Even with 4 years, how are you going to make a difference if I haven't seen it in my 30 plus years of being in the city? It also takes money to run. I'm very proud that I ran as a grassroots candidate, and I was a true grassroots candidate. My entire budget for almost a year of my campaign was $30,000. And the people who placed above me raised upwards of $600,000, right? Contenders, even in the special election, have raised over $300,000. So these are big numbers, big money, and that's not even factoring in outside groups who can run what's called independent expenditures, and they can spend money on things like ads and mailers and TV commercials in support or opposing candidates in this race. So there's a lot of money that's involved, and it does just take a lot of work to get out the vote, to explain to people who you are, how your platform and policies are different. There were 10 candidates in my race. There are 10 candidates in the special election. I expect us to continue to see 10 or more candidates. We also have a special process in Oakland and other cities neighboring that's called ranked choice voting. Some voters are still confused on how this works. Some voters are being intentionally confused by misinformation campaigns, but Oakland has had ranked choice voting for over a decade. Even our registrar doesn't do the best job of explaining it. Some cycles of elections, you've been able to rank 3 candidates. During my cycle, you were able to rank 5 candidates. So we're not even sure what the rankings will allow on our ballot. So there's a lot of challenges. I faced one of the biggest in my campaign, and that was being illegally disqualified by our city clerk's office, who did not know our rules about filings for candidates for office, who didn't understand their own city code provisions. I thankfully was able to successfully fight back and to win, and got placed on the ballot as a candidate. And I was able to do that because I'm a civil rights attorney and I know how to read the law. I know how to read our city charter and city codes, and I was able to advocate for myself. But if I wasn't, I would have had to pay lawyers, pay for court filings and fees to resolve that issue, and had to do it quickly in time to get on the ballot that were printed and sent out to thousands of voters.
You mentioned ranked choice voting, and it is true that in Oakland there's a lot of controversy around that. When you ran in 2022, the ranked choice selection process resulted in the election of Shang Tao, and then council member, or I guess former council member Lauren Taylor, challenged the ranked choice process. He was very critical of it. Can you talk a little bit about that and help the voters explain how we got from challenging the ranked choice process to now being a candidate for mayor?
Yes. Ranked choice, again, has been around for over a decade. I was aware of that entering the race. I actually talked to all of the candidates who had filed in my race to discuss if ranking was possible, if there was alignment at all. And I still messaged that to my voters so that they knew their rights to rank candidates. They knew how it worked, that ranking someone number 2 or 3 doesn't hurt me as their number 1 candidate, and help them to see how this is actually cost saving. So we don't have a general election or a primary election, excuse me, and then a general with the top 2, which means you have to run 2 separate elections. You have to pay for those ballots to get out, for those ballot guides, and voters have to remember to vote twice. Whereas ranked choice voting is also called instant runoff. So it does the same thing in one consolidated election, one-time cost. And so it is better fiscally for our county and for our city to do things that way. And those are part of the reasons why voters passed it over 10 years ago. And I also want to be clear that Lauren Taylor, before he ran for mayor, this cycle and last cycle, served as a city council member for 4 years for District 6. He ran for that District 6 council seat against 5 other candidates. He won his council seat based on ranked choice voting. Right, so he was aware, he understands how it worked. He was successful in a race under ranked choice voting before.
Well, is it true that the Empower group that Lauren Taylor founded after the 2022 election, that one of its goals was to eliminate ranked choice voting in Oakland?
That is my understanding. Again, there's been all types of attacks immediately after the election results that were saying ranked choice voting was scandalous. They were saying that it actually hurts Black voters and disenfranchised voters, which is not funny, but it's actually a bit sad that if you go back and actually look at the history and look at when it was placed on the ballot, that the organization sponsoring this change in our voting system included NAACP Youth in College, organizations that represent Black voters, Latino voters, voters that are historically and currently disenfranchised and have less access to information and less empowerment at the ballot. And so to try to void the work that was done over 10 years ago by these communities that look like us, and to say, oh no, now it's hurting us. Well, it's hurting us, one, because people are spreading disinformation. They're saying things like, if you vote for number 2 or 3 choice, it's going to nullify and cancel out your first choice vote, which is completely untrue. Right. So yes, I think that org and Lauren himself and others may continue to campaign to change ranked choice voting, to remove it from our city elections. And that would be a great disservice to the public.
So let's be clear. You're saying that ranked choice voting came to Oakland and as part of an act of racial justice in large part. Would that be accurate?
Absolutely. Racial justice, and as I mentioned before, also fiscal efficiency, that it's more efficient, it's cost effective to run elections as instant runoffs instead of 2 separate elections that are months apart.
Tell us what it was like to be in the room for those of us who were watching on the Zoom.
There was all types of strict rules that felt very clear that the room was going to be curated and controlled, that the audience was going to be controlled or handpicked, and that there was started to become questions about who are these organizations that are hosting. We know that Empower Oakland was founded by Lauren Taylor, who is a candidate, and they have now endorsed him as their candidate. And the other organization, the Black Action Alliance, no one's ever heard of them, right? People started then doing what they do. Let's look them up. Let's see what we can find online. Let's see if we can figure out who is running this. That brought up a lot more questions. And I think there's still questions. So I was in the room. I was able to give my ticket to an elder who really wanted to attend and wasn't able to register online in time. So I'm glad I was able to bring someone else in who felt that they were being locked out of this opportunity. At the opening, we had Gagan Biyani, who introduced himself on behalf of Empower Oakland. He is clearly not a Black identified person. So Empower Oakland is not claimed to be Black led and completely Black serving, but is focused allegedly on all of Oakland. The Black Action Alliance, the person who spoke, let me see, I got my notes, his name was Malcolm Goodwin. He stated that the Black Action Alliance was founded in 2025. That's this year, right? We're only 3 months into 2025. Okay. And he said that they are a policy advocacy group dedicated to advancing Black lives in the East Bay. That was what he said. You can watch it back. It was recorded on KTV Channel 2 News. If you go to the Black Action Alliance website, at the very bottom where it has all their contact information, it lists contact numbers and address in San Rafael. It's not Oakland based. And their website disclosures at the bottom of their own website says they received a contribution of $22,500 from the Revitalize East Bay Committee. I'm like, okay, that's great. They're disclosing on their website, they're funded by this group. If you dig a little bit deeper, so let me just search, what is this committee? The contributors to that Revitalize East Bay Committee, 3 contributors. First is PG&E, the company that provides our gas and electricity. The second is Act Blue, which is a political contribution platform. And the third is an individual by the name of Ilya Sukar. Again, I'm like, let me just search. Who's Ilya? Why are you contributing, 5 figures to this committee, who's then contributing to Black Action Alliance? Ilya is a San Francisco-based tech executive. Ilya contributed $50,000, $50,000 to empower Oakland, okay, and to various campaigns in Oakland and Alameda County in 2024. So you got to follow the money. And this is what we like to call astroturfing. Astroturf is a concept where political groups, corporations are orchestrating groups and activities for candidates or to affect an election and attempting to make it appear as if it's organic and natural and coming up from the grassroots in the community. To be clear, Malcolm Goodwin is a brother. He's a part of the 100 Black Men of the Bay Area. He's on their executive board. Lauren Taylor is also a member of the 100 Black Men of the Bay Area. So this is a common tactic, especially for moneyed candidates and corporations that support them, to try to create a bunch of new orgs that will then all endorse and support and fund the same candidates. So we could have done that under the 100 Black Men of the Bay Area title, but they've now created this new organization 1 month ago to influence this election and to host a debate, right? They got a debate with hundreds of folks in a room, filmed and advertised by KTVU Channel News. This isn't just something that one resident off the street decided to do one day. These are orchestrated, planned activities that, again, have the appearance of this is just natural support that's coming from the community.
How did it feel being in the room?
It felt, again, that it was stacked with supporters or members of those hosting groups. There was a lot of Lauren Taylor's campaign team or people who had endorsed and supported him. It felt hard for, again, everyday people who weren't a part of these groups to even know this was happening. And by the time they did, right, registration was closed. And there was even messages I received to my email that even if you're registered, you're not guaranteed to be admitted to this event. So there was still a lot of discretion of whether you could get in the building. There was, a lot of energy in the room, I'll say. There was, clapping, there was a little bit of screaming, there was some boos at different times. It seemed that, they were concerted of whether they supported one candidate or not. There was media throughout the room. To be clear, there are 10 candidates running. In this debate, only 2 were invited. I know one of our candidates who is very openly supporting of Donald Trump in his administration, who is a Republican. I call her MAGA Mindy.
MAGA Mindy,
ran
yes.
for mayor many times. She was there wearing her MAGA gear and her Trump buttons. She was upset that she wasn't invited, as were many other candidates. She actually attended in the audience and sat right in front of me. So it's very interesting to just, again, be surrounded by people with conservative views, people who are running in this election, who are upset they couldn't be on the debate stage. Um, Dave Clark from KTVU News was the moderator. He announced at the beginning that all of the questions were submitted beforehand and then vetted by the hosting organizations. I did not see any place, as someone who registered and then received all the follow-up emails, I didn't see any opportunity to submit questions. We couldn't submit questions on the spot. We couldn't ask questions live. So everything, again, was very curated and already planned. And I'm not sure if the candidates even had all those questions beforehand. So there weren't a lot of surprises or to hear organically how candidates might respond or react to certain things. And I actually don't think it was a debate. There wasn't a lot of responding to people or debating policies or solutions. There weren't very many rebuttals. It was just, oh, do you have additional thoughts? And both candidates answered, got their allotted time to answer the same questions. So I think there could have been more intentional. It was a Black event organized by majority Black sponsoring organizations. As someone who was there, almost the entire room, I'll say 95% were Black identified people. And there's a lot of issues in Oakland that are acutely affecting Black folks. And I believe only Barbara Lee mentioned that when talked about homelessness, because an estimated 80+% of our unhoused population identify as Black in Oakland. That is a racial justice issue and a racial crisis that I don't think we would see if this was happening to white residents. And it was a missed opportunity to organize as Black people and to have that really critical conversation when everyone in the room is Black. The two candidates participating were Black.
So there was no thinking about that. The whole issue of gentrification and the loss of Black ownership, the loss of Black residents in Oakland, which is a major issue for us because Oakland historically has been a city with a large Black population. The issues around West Oakland, disinvestment both in West Oakland and East Oakland, and the investment opportunities. No one mentioned anything about Oakland Exchange, which is supposed to be an opportunity by Black athletes to invest millions of dollars in our community. That didn't come up.
Yeah.
The whole right,
the only one sale, right? They talked about the sale a bit in terms of the money, but the whole sale is being made between the African American sports and entertainment group, right? That would be huge for a Black development group to have control over such a huge part of East Oakland and to bring development and economic opportunity to our city and to our region. So those things weren't mentioned, even though this was supposed to be a Black debate, a Black audience, Black candidates.
I will say, let me correct that because I will say I was impressed with Lauren Taylor's vision around the Coliseum. And he did express a commitment to that vision and a recognition of the significant impact that development will have. Now, Congresswoman Lee seemed a lot tentative and perhaps for good reason. Certainly, there's every reason to believe that everyone is throwing every roadblock in the way of the African American sports and entertainment group just because they are Black and because that having the ownership of that property and that land and the ability to develop it for Oakland certainly would take us to another level. And so to not see the full support of both mayoral candidates about that. You're right. The focus on the budget, that's over. It's done. That was, who cares? We are now in 2025 dealing with the push to get that deal done and to begin to support that group as they bring us, into the next level of really entrepreneurship. And Oakland will become so much of a great place and the opportunity for that. Not that we're not already a great place, because we are, but we certainly having a Coliseum and the vision that the African American Sports and Entertainment Group brings to that project will just catapult us over and above San Francisco into one of the major cities of the world. And that is the opportunity. And yeah, it should have been much more of a focus than whatever happened around the budget. The budget is done. It's going to be their problem, but it is not the problem of the African American Sports and Entertainment Group. So there was so much of an opportunity for sure to address the issues. impact of the African American community. We didn't talk about the fact that our police department is failing us, and we have a black police chief, and nobody wanted to touch that with a 10-foot pole. But the mayor is the one who hires and fires the police chief, and this mayor will have to decide if the chief that the prior mayor recruited from Texas and hired, who has really no ties to this community, whether or not he or she will want to retain that person as a police chief. And what is the direction of the police department as we go into what, our 21st year under the consent decree?
I think
Those
it's
issues
too. Again,
yeah,
there are critical public safety issues that absolutely should have been asked, should have been
absolutely.
debated more. And I hope, there are still some forums that will be coming up over the next few weeks, but it's right. We're in a crisis, and part of it fiscally is because of OPD, right? They are pillaging our city budget. We've spent close to half of our entire general fund on one single department. And that is to the detriment of all of our other city services and departments, all of our other city workers who are not getting paid as much, who don't have all the benefits, and who aren't given leeway to just blow through the budget, right? OPD overspends what they're even budgeted. They overspend their overtime budget every single cycle. We've had city administrators, we've had our city auditor, we've had so many bodies that recommend how to rein this in. There's contracting language that you can put in that other cities have to control overspending on overtime. Our OPD contract with OPOA, the Oakland Police Officers Association, was scheduled to end in 2024, had been in effect since 2018. Instead of renegotiating and opening that up and adding things that could protect our city's funds, that could change the way that we're doing policing and ensure we don't have contractual barriers, our city extended it to 2026, right? So that happened under Shang's administration. We have to be real about those things, that there are tools that we have to get out of some of the policing crisis, to get our police department on track, and to also ensure that we have some budget justice in all of our city departments. And we're not having a lot of political will, right? Even the pursuit policy discussion that came up a little bit in the debate was not really based in fact or in truth. Just because Gavin Newsom came and did a press conference and tried to attack our police commission in this policy, there is a policy, and it doesn't say there are no chases allowed, there are no pursuits allowed. That's not what the policy says. It's publicly available. Our police commission did a whole public review in November. There were not changes recommended. Our chief of police then said, because Gavin Newsom made a statement in the press conference, that he wanted to submit changes. The police commission scheduled a meeting for him to do just that, and he did not have changes to present, right? So there's a lot of things that may be talked about in the media, or that may be buzzwords that even candidates are jumping on and talking about in these forums. But what is the actual facts and truth? And is that going to move us forward in policing or move our entire city forward? And it's not. And as you said, we're under 20 plus years of federal oversight and monitoring. And that's from decades of police misconduct that got us into not just federal oversight, but our civilian oversight and our other levels of accountability. And we cannot lose that. And that partly started from abusing Black Oaklanders.
Right.
You can't just say we're not going to hold them accountable. We just want to take away all the monitoring and oversight and then go back to unaccountable police and anti-Black policing. Right. So there wasn't any real discussion about that, any pointed questions. And even the public is not well informed about the actual issues and what it's going to take to end our negotiated settlement agreement that requires federal oversight.
So on that note, I'm going to thank you for joining me on Pamela Price Unfiltered. Thank you for your unfiltered analysis and insights into where we are, how we got here, and where hopefully we will be going. None of us know where we're going, but we certainly hope that those who are championing or campaigning to be our champion will be a champion for racial justice in Oakland, California. Thank you very much for joining me on Pamela Price Unfiltered, Elisa. Take care.
Thank you.
Welcome to Pamela Price Unfiltered. Last week, we talked about political corruption in Oakland arising out of the federal indictment of former Mayor Shang Tao. My special guest was Pamela Drake, a longtime activist, business owner, city hall staffer, and somebody who knows where all the bodies are buried. This week, my guest was Elisa Victory, a union leader, a lawyer, a lifelong Oakland resident, and someone who ran for Oakland mayor in 2022 with this goal of becoming the first Black female mayor in Oakland. The voters may bestow that honor upon the Honorable Barbara Lee within the next few weeks. But we know that political corruption in Oakland did not start with former Mayor Shane Tao, and it did not end. In fact, in 2022, many people voted for Shane Tao instead of her opponents because they also had the stench of political corruption. In 2018, then Mayor Libby Schaaf worked overtime to violate and circumvent campaign finance laws and raise thousands of dollars to remove then City Councilwoman Desley Brooks from the District 6 seat. According to the Oakland Public Ethics Committee, Schaaf secretly ran an independent expenditure committee called Oaklanders for Responsible Leadership that spent $195,000 to remove Brooks and elect Lauren Taylor. Taylor was often referred to as Libby's man in that election at the time. He was elected to his city council seat as a direct result of the political corruption of former Mayor Libby Schaaf. While Taylor apparently was not accused or implicated in any of the political shenanigans that got him elected, he definitely was the beneficiary of the political corruption and the bitter fruit of corruption in Oakland. Ultimately, when Schaaf's proliferation of illegal campaign operations and finance schemes was uncovered, it resulted in fines to her, the Oakland Police Officers Association, the Oakland Chamber of Commerce, Lyft, and a host of other folks who were all implicated in the schemes. You know, one of the most profound observations by my guest, Pamela Drake, was that the moneyed interests that have now come to Oakland were not able to buy elections, but they could buy recalls. When you talk about independent expenditure committees, these are committees that are not supposed to coordinate with a candidate. They can be funded by anybody. They have unlimited amounts of money to spend. And one of the key differences between a recall and an actual election when it comes to campaign finance is that the rules are different. And so the disclosures that are typically required in an election, there are different rules. And so people have gotten to Oakland. We now have Empower. We have Revitalize East Bay. We have Oakland's United for this, Oakland's United Foundational, this and that. All of these, committees that are all funded by the same people. And more recently now, as we discussed earlier, we now have something called the Black Action Alliance, which has no relationship whatsoever to anybody in Oakland. Okay. But so let's talk about the one win and the many losses of Empower and Revitalize East Bay and all these AstroTurf PACs that came to Oakland in the November 2024 election. They won the recall, but when it comes to actual electing people, they lost, with one huge exception. Looking at the city attorney's race, Honorable Brenda Harbin Forte, former judge, ran for city attorney. She had the support of Empower and Foundational Oakland and Revitalize, all the recall groups, and she lost. In District 3, Warren Logan had the same support of all these same groups. He lost. The at-large city council seat that was sought by former police chief LaRon Armstrong, and he had all the Empower and Revitalize East Bay and all these recall groups. He lost. The challengers to District 5, there weren't powerful challengers there, but Noel Gallo, was able to keep his seat. Chris Moore was another rabid recaller that was really supported by these folks. He ran for Board of Supervisors. He lost. He was eclipsed by John Bowders, again, who also got the support of the recall groups. He lost. The one major exception was out of Ken Houston. And literally these folks, the recall people, spent thousands of dollars branding him as the son of Oakland and literally flooding our mailboxes with campaign mailers. They successfully buried the decades-long history that Kenny had of being known as a ladies' man with a history of exploiting women. In 2016, Ken Houston opened his arms and his home to Celeste Guap, the young woman, 19 years old, at the center of the Oakland police, the Bay Area police sex trafficking ring. He became her agent, her boyfriend. He was 50 years old and brought her into his house. In 2018, unhoused residents in Oakland accused Ken Houston of taking money that had been fundraised for them to help them and using it for his own personal expenses. In 2019, he was called out again around the homeless issues and the way that he engaged with the curbside communities. And he actually was accused of evicting women and children who were sleeping in their cars. And then he himself called them liars and thieves and addicts and drug dealers and rapists and criminals and child molesters, arsonists, and prostitutes. The people that he's supposed to be helping. He's most known in Oakland more recently for running the Beautification Council, a nonprofit that had received literally thousands of dollars, millions of dollars actually, from the city of Oakland. In January of 2023, we discovered that he had an illegal contract with the Alameda County District Attorney's Office. I canceled that contract for $236,000. It was not approved by the Board of Supervisors. Therefore, it was illegal. My team also conducted a site visit of the Beautification Council, and we could not confirm that he had proper payroll records or personnel files or the kind of documentation that you actually need when you're running a business. We discovered, in our view, the program participants were not being paid the prevailing wage as required by the California Labor Code, and some program participants were not properly trained to handle hazardous materials or hazardous waste, and sometimes were put in positions where they might have to do that. So that was at the county level. At the city level, the Beautification Council has received a no bid, no contest contract for $4,530,000. They did a $600,000 extension of the contract in December of 2024 after he was elected. So there you have it. The beat goes on for corruption in Oakland. So let's move on to correct the record. The greatest Jedi mind trick ever. She doesn't care about victims. How did they manage to convince so many people that a survivor of domestic violence, sexual assault, and sexual harassment who represented victims for 40 years did not care about victims? That was the greatest Jedi mind trick ever accomplished in Alameda County. Let's talk about my story. 1977, standing in the gap for victims of sexual assault and sexual harassment at Yale University as the lead plaintiff in Alexander versus Yale. 1979, co-founder of the Bay Area Defense Committee for Battered Women, advocating for victims of domestic violence being prosecuted in Alameda County. 1992, making new laws for establishing new law under Title IX for victims of sexual assault in Berkeley. 2002, standing in the gap for victims of racial harassment and employment discrimination, making new law, going to the highest court in the land, the United States Supreme Court. 2003, representing dozens of female correctional officers for decades, fighting for their right to go to work without being sexually assaulted or sexually harassed at work. That's the history. Fast forward to becoming the Alameda County District Attorney. This is what I found when I walked into the Victim Witness Advocates Division as the new DA. We quickly cleaned up this mess and reorganized the office and hired more advocates to be able to process more claims. We increased the workforce by 35%. We diversified the workforce, hiring Indigenous advocates, advocates who spoke Cantonese and Mandarin, more African American advocates, because most of the victims in Alameda County served by the DA's office are African Americans. We hired our first transgender advocate. We reduced the backlog of victim compensation applications and vendor payments that was more than a year down to less than 2 months in under a year's time. We emphasized mental health support by hiring a mental health coordinator so that people didn't just get a piece of paper with a whole bunch of referrals, but they actually got somebody who made sure that they got to the right therapist, that they got the help they needed. We gave them a warm handoff. We were in the process of expanding access and services to the victim witness advocates by creating a 24-hour hotline. We were in the process of expanding support for victims of survivors of crime by providing child care at the Family Justice Center in conversation with community groups on how to access the Measure C money for child care. Our Consumer Justice Bureau was one of the most active teams in the state of California and ever in this office. In 1 year, they obtained a record-breaking, groundbreaking settlements and judgments of $20 million for the residents of Alameda County who were the victims of corporate crimes. We did a groundbreaking criminal prosecution of a major polluter in West Oakland, the first ever criminal grand jury indictment of a major corporation and two of its executives, holding them accountable for polluting the air and the water in West Oakland, as well as the Bay Area. We joined the first prosecution of a rogue landlord on behalf of tenants in the city of Alameda, partnering with the city of Alameda City Attorney's Office. We established 3 community-based commissions, bringing everyday people into the conversation about how justice is administered for the residents of Alameda County, a Victims Advisory Commission, a Mental Health Commission, and a Reentry Commission to help reduce recidivism in Alameda County so that everyday residents could have a voice about how the DA's office serves victims. Lastly, I met with many families, including the family of Jasper Wu and the survivors of Michelle Xavier and Jennifer Dewey and Michaela Garrett, who were murdered by David Mish. And I oversaw the successful prosecution and conviction of David Mish. And last but not least, I stood strong with the family of Rachel Elizabeth Imani Buckner and personally oversaw the successful prosecution of Joseph Roberts for what was probably the most horrific murder in the history of Alameda County. Joseph Roberts dismembered Imani's body. Her head, her hands, and her feet were severed, and her body parts were found along the shoreline in the city of Alameda. It was clearly the most horrific murder involving domestic violence in this county ever. I stood with her family and her friends, and we got justice for them. So there you have it. And I just wanted to correct the record.